How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hope everyone is having a lovely day. How about our Cincinnati Reds? Oh, well, it was going to be interesting to see the way they attacked the offseason. The bats batted really well last season. The pitching staff needed some work. Some solid performances out of the bullpen, but the Reds needed to attack pitching if they wanted to make Reds fans believers that, hey, you know what? This young core, we're believers in it. We're ready to go. We're ready to make some moves. We're ready to start winning. The Reds have done that so far these last 2 days in attacking some starting pitching, attacking reliever and Nick Martinez. Nick Martinez getting picked up from the San Diego Padres. Martinez, an interesting one here because he is a hybrid pitcher. Started 9 times for the Padres last season. He started 19 times for them the past 2 seasons. He's primarily been used out of the bullpen, but in his starts, he's been solid. He's actually been better as a starter than he has a reliever. Specifically last season, he had a sub-3 ERA coming out as a starter or pitching more than 1 inning, or compared to his 1 inning or fewer pitched games where he had an ERA just over 5. So, you know, there's an interesting dynamic for him there, because one thing with the Reds, they're going to enter this season they're going to enter free agency, we should say, with only one pitcher who finished last season with an ERA below 4.46 as a starter. And you are not going to have a very successful season. It's very difficult to do if that is what you're rocking. So the Reds had to attack that area. You bring in a guy like Nick Martinez and say, hey, now here's the thing. Here's what I love about bullpen guys / starters is you never can have too many, I don't think. I can understand there's only 5 men in rotation, but as far as a bullpen guy goes, I just don't think you can. It's such a volatile position in baseball where it's very, very rare and it's difficult. That's why these guys get paid the big bucks to consistently be really good and dominant. So it's very easy for, a Buck Farmer, I want to say Alexi Diaz because he's a stud, but it's easy for somebody to go out there and have 1 really good year or 2 really good years, and then the wheels kind of fall off for a year or two, and then it's like, now what? That was the guy we brought in. We've seen it with the Reds doing with some relievers in the past. It's like, now what? This is the guy you brought in to be good, and he wasn't. And now we're hurting from the bullpen perspective. So the more you can bring in, the more likely you can increase your chances of saying, hey, we're going to get at least 3 or 4 of these guys that are going to be solid and, get us through innings 7 to 9. So I love the idea of the Reds bringing in a bunch of relievers. And in this case, again, you say, hey, if they happen to be deep in the bullpen and they happen to be pitching well, maybe an injury comes up in their rotation. Now Nick Martinez can come in here and pitch for this Cincinnati Reds team. Or maybe they say, hey, we want this guy to be a starter. I think he's got that flexibility that can really be utilized here for the Reds, because, again, you got Connor Phillips, you got Williamson, you got some of these young guys that you want to play. And I would imagine the Reds going into the season are going to say, we want Abbott, we want Ashcraft, we want Green, and we want Lodolo. That's 4. That means there's going to be a lot of guys fighting for that 5 spot. But at the end of the day, those leashes are going to be a lot shorter than what they've been in the past, because now you're wanting to contend, and you can't say, okay, yeah, we believe in these guys, we have faith in these guys, but we're just going to ride it out. I think the Reds are past that now. You say, hey, you're going to have a bad 8, 9, 10, so you're going to start to see 4.5, 5 ERAs. Those won't be on this roster. We can't keep all those on this starting rotation. There's very few of them that they have to be committed to, one of those being 100 years in that contract. And they say, okay, now we have the flexibility. And you bring in Emilio Pagan, again, had a stellar career year last season, really. 2.99 ERA, 0.952. And I tell you what, that's my favorite stat to really look at here, if it's a reliever, is his whip, his walks and hits per inning pitched, for those unfamiliar with the stat and category there. And anything under 1 is spectacular. Anything under 1.2, I'd say is pretty good, in that range. And to think this guy's got a 1.07 whip in his career, I think that's great. That's stellar. Because in a game of baseball where it's so momentum driven, it's so don't let them get the guy on base, right? Don't walk the leadoff man. Don't let the first guy get on base. Don't let them get some sort of momentum. Don't let them get that confidence that, hey, we can get back into this baseball game. How do you let him get back into the baseball game? You let him put a runner on base. To see a guy like this come into this roster and say, hey, that's something he excels in, is keeping runners off the base pads. I love that. And he's such an interesting player, too. I just thought about this, switching back to Nick Martinez real quick. Martinez is such an interesting player because he went 5 years without playing in this league. And he came back and he's looked so much better with that mid threes ERA the last couple of seasons. Pitching in San Diego, being a ground ball pitcher though. Petco being a pitcher friendly park, but he's a ground ball pitcher. 52% of his outs come on the ground. Huge for the Cincinnati Reds and pitching at Great American Ballpark. So I thought those were big additions there for the Reds, seeing both those guys come in, both of them having their specific qualities that are good. You know, Martinez being a ground ball guy, Pagan being the guy that's not allowing guys to get on base. And ultimately, I would think, I think Martinez is definitely that flexible role playing, that utility guy that David Bell probably loves to be able to work with. We know David Bell's the kind of guy that's very pro utility, shake guys up, move them around as much as possible. And the Reds do kind of need that because, again, last season, there's only one pitcher that had over 21 starts for the Cincinnati Reds. So the injury bug, it does come up, and you want to have, again, you don't want to get to the Red situation where you're contending and you have a couple guys get injured. It's like all of a sudden, what's happening? We're trying to piece together a rotation, and that happened last season. Trying to piece together a rotation because they don't have the depth at that point. They have some young guys coming up, but they just didn't have not MLB ready players because guys were getting injured left and right. And that was a learning experience, I think. And you love to see that crawl in this Reds organization. Said, hey, we're not going to let that happen again. We're going to, I would imagine, hopefully, they go out and get another pitcher, another starter, maybe lock things up a little bit there. And then you say, hey, okay, now Martinez can be the hybrid guy. So if an Ashcraft goes down, or if a Lodolo goes down, or a Green goes down, we got that flexibility. We'll see. The overall, I love it. I love that the Reds are making some moves here in free agency. Not doing it via trade. Trades can work, sure, of course, but you got to be careful with those. And I like the structure of these deals, by the way. Yeah, not much said about it here. Both of them 2-year contracts, one for 26, one for 13 or 16, one for 16. And they're 2-year deals, 1-year options for the players at the end of the season. And because they're both 33. I think that's the other tricky dynamic the Reds have here in free agency. You don't want to pay a guy or sign a guy that wants 5 to 7 years. Because you got some of the young guys in the organization across the board that you say, are they going to slot into play? You don't want to bury them, but you also don't want to risk not being able to pay them. You don't want to get locked into a guy that's 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38 for 5 years. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, what do we do with this contract? Because we sure would like to sign Ellie. We sure would like to sign McClain. We sure would like to sign out. There's a lot of guys that need signed. So if you can find the guys in a 2 to 3 range right now, I think that's perfect for the Reds. That is really their, it's funny, we call it the Super Bowl window with the quarterback. That's kind of their World Series window with baseball because you got all these young guys. Eventually they're going to need paid. You got quite a few years to work with though until that happens. Make the most of that money. Don't be cheap in free agency. Spend it. Put it on some players. Try to contend for a World Series here. Love to y'all's thoughts. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.